Hello again. I don't know whether you watched the last video or not. If you did, then you're going to understand with what we're going to talk about this time what I was talking about when I said it's really important to understand positive and negative numbers, how to think about them, how they relate to each other. You'll understand that today. If not, you might want to go back and take a look at that video and see. Today we're going to talk about adding signed numbers. And when you hear that word, this is the word I'm talking about, signed numbers. There may be a lot of situations where we think of something when we hear the word sign, but in math there are actually only two signs, positive, negative. So when you think of signs related to math, those are the two that you're thinking about. So when I talk about signed numbers, thinking back to our number line, I'm going to think about positive numbers, numbers that have a positive sign, and negative numbers, numbers that have a negative sign in front of them. Now, you may already know that we don't write the positive all the time. It's just understood that if there's no sign there, it's understood that it's positive rather than negative. That's kind of good, I guess, because it says basically we're positive, and somebody has to make things negative. They just aren't automatically negative. So, a little philosophy there. Forget about that. Okay. We're going to talk about some situations today, and hopefully these will get you a little more clear on where we use signs. For example, if you got a salary increase of $50, that would be positive, wouldn't it? Okay, and so the way we write that is plus 50. Is everybody clear on that? Does that make sense to you that that's plus 50? You're getting 50 more than you did before. It's a positive experience. However you want to remember it, that's what that sign does for us. Now, suppose that your boss gave you this salary increase, and you're the kind of person that appreciates being appreciated. So when you get that increase in your wage, it just makes you work doubly hard. Well, a month or so later, the boss comes to you and says, you know what, I'm really impressed. You just have been working so hard for us. We really appreciate what you're doing for us. And because you've done so well, we're going to give you another raise. Well, this time, the raise is going to be $100. Now, that would be positive, right? Okay, so let's write that down. Now, think for a second, where would you be if you, compared to when you started, before you got the first raise, where is your salary now after this second raise compared to what it was before? Okay, you're $150 higher than you were before. So we add those two together. That makes sense? Okay, now let's go the other direction and see if it still kind of holds true. Let's say that you like to go over to Wendover every once in a while, do a little gaming for fun, and you go over one Friday night, and on the first hand you lost $20. Now, how would you represent that with a signed number? Okay, that would be a negative experience, okay? So we're going to be here at negative 20. Now, that just never happens to you. You never lose, so you're not worried about it at all, and you're going to go ahead and keep playing. And on the next hand, you lose $30. That's also negative, isn't it? Okay, so that's negative 30. Now, where do your financial fortunes lie at this point in time relative to when you first walked in the casino? Okay, you're now $50 lower than what you were before. Or here you are at negative 50. These two examples represent the rule for adding signed numbers when the signs of the numbers are the same. Okay, so over here, look at the signs involved. And look here at the signs and tell me what the relationship is with our answer, the sign of our answer, compared to the signs of the numbers that we're adding together. Okay, you can see that. They are the same. So when you add sign numbers together and the signs are the same, the sign of your answer is going to be that same sign. Okay, now let's take a look at the numbers. I've got here a 20, a 30, and a 50. Here I've got a 50, 100, and 150. What's the relationship between the numbers that we're adding together and our answer when the signs are the same? Okay, so in general the rule goes like this. When you're adding signed numbers and the signs are the same, then you use that same sign for your answer and you just add the numbers together. Now, sometimes it helps to be able to visualize this, so I'm going to show you something you can do really quickly, and you see if it doesn't help. Okay, over here, we'll do it with the number line. Over here, we start out here at 0, and we got that first raise, and it took us over here to 50. Now, we don't go back and start over again. We start from where we left off. So we start from here and we go 100 more. Look at that and see if you can visualize where you're going to be. Over 50, over 100 more. You see that? In a similar way, except we'd be going the opposite direction, I start off and I went minus 20 in that direction. And again, I don't go back and start over again. I start from right here and I went 30 more. Can you see that? Can you visualize that? When you're talking about numbers with signs, it's really important to learn to visualize. Now, you don't have to write it down on a piece of paper or a board. I visualize like this. I think, okay, I start here at 0. I got a raise to 50. I got another raise of 150. And I visualize where that's taking me on the number line. Another thing you can do is it's kind of this mental visualization kind of a thing. You say to yourself, okay, these two numbers, they're both taking me in the same direction. Am I going to be in the positive or negative with these two numbers? And I can see I'm going to be in the positive. And then I ask myself, how far into the positive am I? There's something about that question that gets our brain focusing, and it says, well, we went 50 and 150 more. Better say 100 more. So I'm going to be a total of 150. Our brain saying something like that helps our brain to recognize it. However you do it, you're going to have to do something so you can make sure that you end up in the right place. Signed numbers tend to be a problem for people. Whatever the cause is, they tend to be a problem. Now, that's when the signs are the same. Let's look at what happens when the signs are different. And we'll do like we did before. We'll start out with an example and see where it takes us. Okay, let's suppose that your checkbook balance, for whatever reason, it just happens sometimes, ends up being at minus 15. Of course, that's negative. We know that. You're a good person and you don't want to, you want to take care of things, so you immediately go to your financial institution, you take them $50. So that's positive 50. Where is your account going to show? What's your account going to show after you do this? Starting when you were in the hole, and then you took $50. Okay, you see that? You're going to be at 35. If you do the visualizing kind of thing, you went first of all over here to minus 15, and then the 50 took you back in the positive direction. When you're doing this, if you'll use the 0 as the reference, sometimes it helps. Because I know if I'm over here at negative 15, let's get our number line. I'm over here at negative 15. And then I go 50 in the positive direction. That's going to take me well beyond the 0. And I know at negative 15, I'm 15 away from 0. So after I take off the 15, what's left? Okay, so I'm going to be over here at 35. This is after going plus 50 from when I was over here at negative 15. Okay, this is even more important than it was when the signs were the same, because it's a little more complicated to get our brain to think about it. Now, let's suppose that we'll use the Wendover thing again. You went over to Wendover, and you won $25 on the first hand. Plus 25. And you said, hey, it's finally happening. This is my night, man. I'm going to really hit it big tonight. And so you go right after it. Well, on the second hand, you lose $42. That's negative. Where are you going to be after those first two hands? Well, if you take the number line, you went over here to plus 25, but then you came all the way back here, minus 42. Takes you 25 to get back to 0, so whatever's left over, you're going to be going into the negative that far. You figure out what that's going to be. It's going to be negative 17. So these two examples represent the idea of adding sign numbers when the signs are different. Well, let's take a look at this. Here, we ended up in the positive. Look at the two numbers that we added together. Can you tell what the sign comes from? The sign of the bigger one. Okay? Here, we ended up in the negative. But the sign of the bigger one was negative. So that works. So, as far as the sign goes, when we add sign numbers and the signs are different, the sign of the larger one will be the sign of our answer. Now, how do we get the number? Well, here we had a 50 and a 15, and we ended up at 35. We didn't never do this one, but if we did, we'd end up at negative 17. Well, where does the number come from then? The difference between the two numbers involved. So the rule for adding sign numbers when the signs are different, you take the sign of the larger one and you find the difference between those two numbers. Now, this is where it's really helpful when you can visualize. When I visualize this, I look at these two, and if I draw the picture, is kind of what I did here. You can see what happens. Or if I use that idea that I did about saying it, when I look at these two, they're taking me in opposite directions. So I ask myself, am I going to end up in the positive or negative? I get my brain to focus on that. Well, since I went further in the positive direction, I know I'm going to be in the positive. And then I ask myself, how much further did I go? And for some reason, when we ask that kind of a question, our brains seem to know how much further is the difference between those two numbers. And so we get that. So you can either do it using a number line, or you can do that same kind of a thing where you kind of talk your way through it, but you learn how to do that. You've got to learn how to do something. Signs for numbers is one of the most challenging things for a lot of people. It's amazing how many times people will make mistakes on things because they have trouble getting the signs right, getting the numbers right when we're involving adding, when we've got signed numbers. So it's something that is a challenge, but it's something you can learn how to do. And so learn the rules. Well, I don't know, you can learn the rules if you want, or learn the idea. I think when you learn to visualize things so you can see it, that's better. So if I'm familiar with these rules, or better yet, if I'm familiar with what's happening, I'm familiar with the idea so I can visualize it, then I can do this. So if I've got -7 and I add +5, then what I think is, okay, I'm over here at -7. I'm going in the positive direction 5. I know that's not enough to get me even back to 0, so I'm going to still be in the negative. And when I figure out how far when I figure out 5 units away from 7, going towards the positive, then I can see that that's going to leave me at 2. Or I can just simply say, take the sign of the larger one, that's going to be negative. The difference between those two numbers, the 7 and the 5, is a 2. And that's exactly where I said that we ended up. Okay, this is another thing that's really important. Learn how to visualize this. You've got to do something to kind of keep your brain under control, because it's prey to some of these things that just kind of happen if you don't think about it otherwise. So work on it, look at the notes, go through the video if you have to get it, but make sure you're clear on this, because if you've got to understand how these sign things work to be doing all of the stuff that we're going to be doing. This sign thing comes into play over and over again, and if you don't get it straight, you're bound to have some trouble. I really do hope this helps. I hope you'll take the information I gave you and work with it until it becomes second nature, so it's just automatic, and then it'll work for you and you won't have trouble with it. So look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks for coming. Bye.